Hello and happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome back to you and to me. Again, sorry for missing last week. Just had more important things to do last Sunday morning. But it's all right. It's all right to take breaks every now and then. Remember that. But it's good to be back to do another one of these because today we're talking about one of my favorite topics to talk about. And for people who know my backstory, especially when it comes to my deconversion and flip to atheism, as it were, or apistivism. Um, Shout out to anyone who actually knows what that means. Don't worry, I'm not going to get into it in this video. Maybe another time. Yeah, but when I deconverted and lost my faith completely, one of the biggest issues for me was the issue of divine hiddenness. Love it so much, I say it so well. So for people who aren't familiar with the issue, it's basically one of the arguments that can be used against the existence of God, especially, again, as I'm usually particularly talking about the Christian God. But basically, there's the official logical syllogism form of it, which is something along the lines of, okay, if there's an all-loving God who wants a relationship with everyone and wants people to believe in him, then there should be no such thing as what they call a non-resistant non-believer. Basically, that part of it's to kind of cover people who are like, well, maybe they don't believe because they just don't want to, so they're just going to ignore all evidence. So, I mean, God's not going to make them, and we'll get into that. Um, so, so it's supposed to cover, okay, but what about all the people who seem to be out there who aren't resistant to believing? They might even actually want to believe, but just remain unconvinced. It's basically saying, okay, if those people exist, or if this God is like this, then those people should not exist. But when we look out, we do see non-resistant non-believers. Like I was one. Like on my way out, I wasn't trying to lose my faith. I kind of wanted to hold on to it in a lot of ways, actually, but just couldn't. So then it concludes, non-resistant non-believers exist, therefore this God does not exist, in so many words. So that's the official logical argument. I'm not really going to get into that so much. I mean, I think part of it is, I think the whole non-resistant part is kind of unnecessary because that kind of implies that God, even if he wants you to know he's there, he can't overcome your resistance, which, I don't know, seems odd. Also, I think examples in the Bible, like Saul of Tarsus, who became Paul, like God still showed up and appeared to him and made himself known. And I can't think of anyone more resistant to belief than someone who was actively persecuting the followers of Jesus. But if God was able to overcome his resistant non-belief, then he should be able to do it with anyone. But so this is one of those arguments. It's basically like, so that's the logical like argument in like philosophical circles or whatever. But the more colloquial version is just God. Like I just don't see God anywhere. He's not apparent. He hasn't made himself known. I just don't really see God. Basically, that's what it essentially boils down to. And there's lots of ways that Christians, apologists especially, will try to argue against that, and why it's really not a good reason, why people really still should believe, or maybe why God has given sufficient evidence, but we just aren't seeing it or whatever. So I'll probably revisit this concept in several future videos, just because, like I said, it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. But today I want to focus on what I think is one of the worst arguments against divine hiddenness from like the Christian perspective, and that is if God were to just show up and prove himself, then that would violate our free will. Now, if you're like me and just hearing that and you're thinking that makes no damn sense, you're correct. But let's get into it. So part of the reason they talk about how it would violate your free will is they'll say, well, love requires free will and a free choice to love. If it's forced, then it's not love. Now, let's set aside for this argument the whole argument of whether or not free will even exists. I'm not convinced it does, but let's just say for the sake of this discussion, we have free will. And for some reason, the Christians are saying for God to just show up and prove himself to us and be very apparent and just right there, would violate our free will, particularly when it comes to our choice to love him. I think when you spell it out like that, you kind of see how ridiculous it sounds, but that's the problem is when apologists present this, it's like, I don't know if conflating is the right word or using a little bit of like a bait and switch or whatever. We'll see if I can make this make sense. It's like, so this whole aspect of the situation of being convinced that God exists and loving him and believing in him, serving him, all that stuff. It's very dynamic, a lot like multifaceted. So in one aspect, yes, the part where we have to make the decision whether or not we're going to love him and serve him and like obey him, like that involves free will. So they'll say, yeah. So whether they're doing this consciously or not, I think if they're doing it consciously, it's incredibly deceptive. But if not, then they're just not letting themselves think about it too much. So they're taking this idea that, okay, in this part of the situation, free will is necessary. So therefore, we can just take any aspect where free will would be violated and say, okay, that's a problem for the whole thing, even if it's not. I'm hoping this is making sense. But here's the thing. For most people like me who are wanting God to show up and just prove himself to us, make it so plain that he really exists, which, makes sense if he wants us to believe, you'd think he'd be all about doing that. Like, we're not asking him to force us to love him. Like, that's not the issue here. So for them to be arguing against it from that angle is just completely missing the point. But instead, they're making the really ridiculous claim that God simply showing up would violate our free will somehow. I mean, let me put it to you this way. Like, is me making this video and showing you that I exist and putting it out there on the internet for you to see, am I violating anyone's free will by doing this? I mean, I'm certainly not forcing you to love me. I mean, just because you know I exist, you are completely free to, I mean, you might love me, you might hate me, you might just be completely indifferent, not give a shit. You still have that choice of how you receive how I present myself to you and make myself known and very evident, right? So saying that God can't just show up because that would violate our free will. It's like, yeah, you might say it violates your free will. Again, there's that whole discussion. Can you really choose what you're convinced of? So yeah, in that sense, by proving himself to us, it's like, if you're convinced he's there, you can't really necessarily convince yourself not to believe it. I don't know, that's a whole other discussion. But he's not violating our free will to make the choice of whether or not we actually love him and want to follow him. Making sense? So in other words, awareness does not force devotion. So yeah, people know about other people and reject them all the time. Because here's the thing, even in the Bible, we have God like showing up and proving himself. I mean, he's talking to people all the time. Like, he's like face to face with Adam and Eve in the garden. He's talking to Abraham like a friend. He's like, at least shows his butt to Moses. Like, yeah, look that up. It's kind of funny. Or at least shows up in a burning bush and is talking to him. I mean, and also talked about Saul of Tarsus being converted to Paul, like on the road to Damascus. I mean, and never mind Jesus. I mean, plainest example, like it's supposed to be like the central story of the Bible, what it's all about. But we have Christians saying, well, God can't just show up and say, I'm God, that would violate your free will. Then what the hell was Jesus? I mean, at least according to the Gospel of John, again, whole other topic, so many of those surrounding this, he very much came and said, hi, I'm God. Like, was Jesus violating anyone's free will? Or my man doubting Thomas, was he violating Thomas's free will when he asked for proof and Jesus gave him proof? Like, so it just makes no sense. Like, come on, Christians, read your Bible. So, it's really what this comes down to is, how much does God want this relationship with us? And what is he willing to do to show himself to us and make himself known and get this relationship to actually happen? Because whether or not you believe that the consequences of whether or not you believe in God and Jesus is you go to hell, if you're like most evangelical Christians here in the States, or if you're an annihilationist, you just get annihilated. I mean, either way, pretty dire consequences. Or even if you're a universalist, like I used to be, then the consequence is you are missing out on the best, most fulfilling, loving relationship with the ultimate being of love itself, who made you and wants a relationship with you. You're missing either, like, no matter what the stakes are, they're pretty big, and what you're missing out on is huge. So for God to just be like, well, I can't just show up, even as much as I want a relationship with them and how important it is, like, I can't just make it happen, basically. Which, yeah, I mean, think about it long enough and see if that makes sense. It absolutely does not to me. So, I mean, and never mind the whole, and this goes back to something I've talked about in other videos about, like, how, like, what, think about it in terms of, like, well, God doesn't owe it to you to just show up. I'm like, well, again, okay, you can make that argument, but if he loves me, then you'd think he would want to anyway, whether or not he owes it to me. Like, I talked about this in my video about why I'm a better dad than God, because, I just think in so many of my videos, I keep coming back to the parenting analogy, because it's all throughout the Bible calling God a father. So I'm like, okay, let's play that out, see what it actually looks like in real life terms. Like, I mean, I could say, like, I don't owe my kids, like, birthday presents, Christmas presents. Like, you could make the argument I do owe them things like, a place to live and food and clothes and take them to school and stuff like that. But things like Christmas, birthday presents, I don't owe them, like, trips to the zoo or vacations or whatever, or just having nice things, letting them play sports or whatever. But even though I don't owe them those things, I still do those things for them because I love them. And I think thinking of this in terms of, like, well, God doesn't owe you, it's like, then how much does he really love you, if that's the case? If he's only about, well, I don't owe you, so I'm not gonna. Even though this is gonna have the dire consequences, as we discussed, I don't owe it to you. It's like, what the hell is that? Literally, the hell. So, yeah, in conclusion, people notice I've been looking down my notes here because I actually had ChatGPT help me put this together. But I want to close with something that, this is actually something that ChatGPT said that I thought was so good, and I'd love to just say it, but I can't take credit for it, so at least got to let you know where it's coming from. So, having this whole discussion about why this doesn't make sense, like blaming violation of free will, and then also the aspect of, like, when they say, like, well, if they just showed up, then it wouldn't take faith. I'm like, okay, so fine. I don't care. Maybe more about my opinions on faith and epistemicism in another video. Maybe I should have saved this shirt for later. I don't know. Do y'all mind if I wear the same shirt more than once? I mean, I do, but that's probably just me. Anyway, so here's something that ChatGPT said about this whole, how God showing up would violate our free will, and whether or not that makes sense, and how much it doesn't. And how it just seems to be so counterintuitive to the relationship aspect and, like, the love of it. It says, if someone truly wanted to be known and loved, they wouldn't hide behind philosophical loopholes. They'd show up. And I think that is just so powerful and true, because that's what really all this apologetic nonsense about this and so many other issues is. Like, they're trying to come up with all these different philosophical reasons to try to wiggle their way out of it. And also, people familiar with the term ad hoc, like, I use that a lot with apologetics, so think back about the things that apologists have been arguing that I mentioned in this video and see if, like, that phrase ad hoc seems like it fits. I think it does. But yeah, they'll try to hide behind all these arguments, but like I said, when it really comes down to it is, does God love me, and does he want this relationship or not? And is God going to use these excuses, or is he just going to show up? So, yeah, at the end of the day, I think that's what it comes down to. But again, those are just my thoughts. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you think. Am I way off base on something? Does it make sense to you? Like, either way, or if you have more questions, want to hear me talk about this some more, different things about it, or if there's just any other topic you'd like to hear me talk about, appreciate taking suggestions there as well. All right, that's it for today, and probably see you back here next week.